There is a civilization on this planet that has been running cities, farming food, commanding armies, and ruling the land for 130 million years. And we have spent most of human history not even noticing it. Welcome to Wild World Explorer, the channel where we go deep into the stories nature never told you out loud. Today we are talking about ants, not the little thing you shoo away from your picnic. We are talking about one of the most sophisticated, most ruthless, and most successful civilizations in the history of life on Earth. A civilization that collectively outweighs every wild mammal on this planet combined. That farms its own food. That wages organized war, that enslaves other species. And that was already doing all of this, while the dinosaurs were still walking around trying to figure out what hit them. We showed up yesterday by comparison. Picture this. It is a Tuesday morning in the Amazon rainforest. You kneel down beside a trail and look closely at the soil. What looks like a moving carpet is actually a column of leafcutter ants, each one holding a piece of leaf 3 times its own size above its head, marching in perfect formation down a highway they built themselves, carrying that harvest underground to feed a fungus garden that has been cultivated by their colony for generations. No foreman, no blueprint, no boss giving orders, just thousands of individual workers acting as one single living machine. Now zoom out. That same scene is playing out on every continent on Earth except Antarctica, in your backyard, under your kitchen floor, in the walls of your office building, right now as you watch this video. There are 20 quadrillion ants going about their business on this planet. That is 20 followed by 15 zeros. The species responsible for all of this belongs to the family Formicidae, a name that comes from the Latin word formica, meaning ant, simple name, extraordinary animal. The scientific order they belong to is Hymenoptera, the same group that includes bees and wasps, creatures that share the same ancient blueprint but took very different roads through evolution. By the end of this video, you will see the world under your feet in a completely different way, and you might never feel quite as dominant as you did before. So where exactly does this creature fit in the grand family tree of life? That is a question worth slowing down for, because the answer tells you a lot about why ants are so extraordinarily good at what they do. Ants belong to the animal kingdom, the phylum Arthropoda and the class Insecta. In plain terms, they are insects, the same broad category as beetles, butterflies, and dragonflies. But within that enormous class, ants have a very specific address. They sit inside the order Hymenoptera, a word that comes from ancient Greek meaning membrane wing. This order also includes bees and wasps, 2 groups that share a surprisingly deep family history with ants. Now here is where it gets interesting. Ants did not always look the way they do today. Scientists believe that ants evolved directly from a wasp, like ancestor, sometime during the Cretaceous period, roughly 140 million to 160 million years ago. That is before the mass extinction event that wiped out the large dinosaurs, before the continents fully separated into the shapes we recognize today. Ants were already here, already evolving, already adapting. The family name is Formicidae. Every single one of the more than 20,000 known ant species on Earth belongs to this one family. Think about that for a moment. 20,000 species, and they are all ants, not similar insects, not close cousins, actual ants, packed into one family like a building with 20,000 different apartments, each one running its own version of the same basic civilization. Within that family, scientists have identified around 300 genera, which is the grouping level just above species. Some of the most well-known groups include Camponotus, the carpenter ants that tunnel through wood; Solenopsis, the fire ants that sting like a lit match pressed to your skin; and Atta, the leafcutters we met in the Amazon just a moment ago. What makes Hymenoptera so fascinating as an order is a trait called haplodiplody. This is the unusual genetic system that determines sex in ants, bees, and wasps. It means that fertilized eggs become females, and unfertilized eggs become males. This quirk of biology has massive consequences for how ant colonies are organized, who does the work, and why cooperation runs so deep in their society. And that society, as you are about to discover, is far more complex than anything you might expect from an insect the size of a sesame seed. 20,000 species, one family, and they have spread themselves across almost every corner of this planet in a way that no other animal group has managed to pull off quite so completely. Ants are found on every continent except Antarctica. That is not a small achievement. That means they have figured out how to survive in the freezing edges of the Arctic tundra, in the scorching sand of the Sahara Desert, in the dripping wet canopy of the Amazon rainforest, and in the cracked concrete of your city sidewalk. Same family, completely different worlds, and they thrive in all of them, in the tropical rainforests of South America and Southeast Asia. Ant diversity is staggering. A single acre of Amazon rainforest can contain more ant species than the entire country of England. Some of those species live entirely in the treetops, never touching the ground their whole lives. They build nests from leaves they stitch together with silk produced by their own larvae. Hanging like green lanterns high above the forest floor, in the deserts of the American Southwest and North Africa. Other species have learned to survive extreme heat by going deep. Harvester ant colonies dig tunnels that can reach 3 meters underground, where the temperature stays cool even when the surface above is hot enough to fry an egg. They store seeds down there, carefully sorted and arranged, enough to last the colony through months of drought. In the wetlands and floodplains of the southern United States, fire ants have developed one of the most astonishing survival strategies you will ever see. When floodwaters rise, they do not drown, they link their bodies together, forming a living raft made entirely of ants, floating on the surface of the water for days at a time, keeping the queen safe at the center until dry land appears again. In cities, pavement ants have quietly colonized the gaps between every building, road, and parking lot on the planet. You have walked over their kingdoms 1,000 times without knowing it. The point is this: ants did not adapt to fit the world. They adapted to fit every version of it. And that flexibility is only possible because of something remarkable about the way their bodies are built. Something we have not looked at closely enough yet. Pick up an ant, hold it between your fingers for just a moment. What you are holding is a piece of engineering so precise, so compact, and so efficient that human designers are still studying it today to build better robots. The ant body is divided into 3 main sections: the head, the mesosoma, and the gaster. That middle section, the mesosoma, is what most people would call the thorax. And it is where all 6 legs attach. 6 legs, each one jointed and grippy, capable of carrying the ant across vertical walls, upside down across ceilings, and through terrain that would stop a much larger animal cold. But the head is where things get truly extraordinary. Start with the mandibles. These are the jaw, like structures at the front of the ant's face, and they are not just for eating, depending on the species. Mandibles are used for cutting, digging, carrying, fighting, building, and even snapping shut at speeds so fast they create a shockwave. The trap jaw ant can close its mandibles at over 200 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest moving body parts in the entire animal kingdom. Then there are the antennae. 2 of them jointed in the middle, constantly moving. These are not just feelers, they are the ant's primary sense organ. An ant uses its antennae to smell, to taste the air, to detect vibrations, to read chemical signals left by other ants, and to assess the shape and texture of objects around it. Take away an ant's antennae and it is essentially blind to its own world. Speaking of vision, most ants have compound eyes that give them a wide field of view, good for detecting movement, but not great for fine detail. Some species that live entirely underground have no eyes at all. They do not need them. Their antennae tell them everything. There is also a structure called the petiole, a narrow waist between the mesosoma and the gaster. This flexible joint is what lets the ant bend and twist with remarkable agility. And inside that gaster, many species carry a venom gland connected to a stinger, or to acid-spraying glands that can shoot formic acid at threats from a distance. This body, as small as a grain of rice, contains more specialized tools than most animals 10,000 times its size. And now the question is, how does a creature this small use all of that to build something as complex as a civilization? All those specialized tools, the antennae, the mandibles, the venom glands, they would mean nothing without one thing: the ability to work together. And this is where ants stop being just interesting insects and start being something genuinely unsettling in how familiar they feel. An ant colony does not have a leader, not really. The queen does not give orders, she lays eggs, that is her entire job. The workers, the soldiers, the foragers, they make every decision themselves, collectively, without anyone telling them what to do. And yet the whole system runs like a machine with a plan. How? Chemistry. Every ant produces and detects chemical signals called pheromones. These molecules are released into the air, left on surfaces, pass through touch, and they carry meaning. A forager that finds food lays a pheromone trail on the way back to the nest. Other ants follow that trail. The more ants that use it, the stronger it gets. When the food runs out, no new ants reinforce the trail and it fades. No meeting, no memo, no discussion. The colony just knows. When danger appears, a single ant releases an alarm pheromone and within seconds, hundreds of soldiers are mobilizing. The signal spreads through the nest like a ripple through water. And every ant responds to its role automatically. It is not chaos, it is a language. And it is more efficient than anything we built for thousands of years. But it goes deeper than just logistics. Ants also show behaviors that look remarkably like social bonding. They groom each other constantly, passing chemical information through that contact that tells each ant the health and status of its nestmates. When a nestmate dies, ants carry the body to a dedicated burial area outside the colony. They do this consistently. And with what researchers have described as deliberate care, there is also the question of what scientists call collective intelligence. A single ant is not smart, it follows simple rules. But thousands of ants following simple rules simultaneously produce outcomes that look like sophisticated planning. The colony solves problems that no individual ant could solve alone. It is a kind of thinking that happens not in one brain, but spread across thousands of bodies at once. We have a word for a system like that. We call it a superorganism. And understanding what that really means changes everything about how we see what comes next. A superorganism needs to reproduce. And the way ants do it is one of the most dramatic events in the natural world, happening right above our heads. Mostly unseen on warm evenings in late summer, it is called the nuptial flight, on a signal that scientists still do not fully understand. Triggered by temperature and humidity and something in the collective awareness of the colony. Thousands of winged queens and winged males burst out of their nests simultaneously, not just one colony. Every colony of the same species in the region does it on the same day, sometimes the same hour. The sky fills with flying ants in numbers so large they show up on weather radar. The males exist for this single moment. They mate in the air and then they die. Their entire life from egg to death can be as short as a few weeks. They are born, they fly, they fulfill their purpose, and they are gone. The queen lands alone. She tears off her own wings. Because she will never need them again. She finds a crack in the soil, a gap under a stone, a hollow in rotting wood. And she seals herself inside, alone, no workers, no helpers, no food source. Just her own body fat and the dissolved muscle tissue from her now useless wings, which she metabolizes to survive. From that sealed chamber, she begins to lay eggs. She raises the first generation entirely by herself. Those first workers are tiny and thin because the queen had almost nothing to feed them, but they are enough. They dig out the nest, they find food, they begin to care for the next batch of eggs. And from that point, the colony grows. A mature queen can live up to 30 years. In that time, she can produce millions of offspring. Every single worker in the colony is her daughter, and not one of those daughters will ever reproduce. Because the queen's chemical presence suppresses their fertility completely, they give everything to the colony. They get nothing for themselves individually, and yet they thrive because the colony thrives. Then there is the darker side. Some ant species raid neighboring colonies and drag back their pupae. Those pupae hatch inside the raiding colony and spend their lives working for a queen that is not their own. Slave-making ants. It sounds like a metaphor. It is not. It is Tuesday in the ant world, and it has been happening for millions of years. Ants have been part of human life for so long that they found their way into our stories long before they found their way into our science books. And some of those stories turn out to be stranger than fiction. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about giant ants in the deserts of what is now northern India and Pakistan. Ants, he said, the size of foxes that dug up gold-flecked sand while burrowing underground. Local people would rush in, steal the sand and flee before the ants could catch them. For centuries, this was dismissed as pure myth. Then in the 1990s, a French researcher named Mitchell Pacel visited the Himalayan plateau of Diasai in Pakistan and found something unexpected. A species of marmot, a large burrowing rodent, that digs tunnels through soil that is genuinely rich in gold dust. Local people had been collecting that disturbed soil for generations. The marmot, seen from a distance, seen through the filter of an ancient story, became the giant gold-digging ant. The myth was real. The animal was just misidentified across 2,000 years of retelling. Then there is the mystery of the supercolony. In 2000, scientists studying Argentine ants in Europe made a discovery that nobody had a clean explanation for. They found that Argentine ant colonies along the Mediterranean coast, stretching from Italy to Portugal, more than 6,000 kilometers apart, showed no aggression toward each other whatsoever. Ants from one end of that range, placed next to ants from the other end, groomed each other as if they were nestmates. This should not be possible. Normally, ants from different colonies fight, but these ants, descended from a small number of individuals accidentally introduced from South America, had formed what researchers called the largest cooperative unit ever recorded in animal history. How do billions of unrelated ants, spread across an entire continent, maintain a shared identity without ever meeting, the chemical signature that identifies a nestmate? But how it stays consistent across such distance and such numbers is still not fully understood. And then there is the zombie ant. A fungus called Ophiocordicep infects carpenter ants in tropical forests, takes control of their muscles, forces them to climb to a specific height on a specific type of plant, and then kills them there, fruiting from their heads to spread spores onto the ants walking below. The ant does not choose any of this. Something else is steering. It is the kind of thing that belongs in a horror story, except it is real. It is Tuesday, and scientists are still figuring out exactly how the fungus hijacks a living nervous system with such precision. Some questions, it turns out, the ants are not done answering yet, so where does that leave us? The zombie fungus. The continent spanning supercolony, the gold myth that turned out to be mostly true. All of it points to the same uncomfortable reality. We share this planet with a civilization we have barely begun to understand. As a group, ants are not endangered. They are, by almost any measure, thriving, but that does not mean the picture is entirely comfortable. Specific species, particularly those with narrow habitat ranges in tropical forests, are disappearing quietly as land gets cleared, burned and paved, and those losses matter more than they seem because ants are not just residents of ecosystems. They are engineers of them. Ants aerate the soil more effectively than earthworms in many environments. They disperse the seeds of thousands of plant species, including some that rely almost entirely on ants to reproduce. They control populations of other insects that would otherwise spiral out of balance. Remove the ants from a forest and you do not just lose the ants, you begin to lose the forest. Climate change is already shifting the ranges of ant species in ways researchers are only starting to track. Some species are moving to higher elevations as lowland temperatures rise. Others are arriving in regions where they have never existed before, sometimes with consequences for the native species already there. The Argentine ant supercolony we talked about is partly a climate story. Warmer ports, faster shipping. More accidental introductions. The invisible civilization is moving, and it is moving faster than before. But here is what stays with me after everything we have covered. The ant did not build its civilization by having the biggest brain, or the sharpest claws, or the loudest voice. It built it by cooperating at a scale that nothing else on Earth has matched. Every individual gives everything. No one waits for someone else to do the work, and the result, after 130 million years, is a civilization that outweighs all wild mammals on this planet combined. We arrived yesterday. We built cities and called ourselves dominant, but under every one of those cities in the soil beneath the concrete, the older civilization is still running, quietly, efficiently, without asking our permission. Maybe the most important thing the ant can teach us is not about strength or strategy. Maybe it is simply this. The most durable things ever built on this earth were built together. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Wild World Explorer. If this story made you see the world a little differently, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It means everything to us, and it helps more people find these stories.